The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy downtown street as Dr. Amelia Washington stepped out of her modest rental car. She had deliberately chosen the oldest, most basic vehicle from the rental agency, knowing that appearances mattered more than most people cared to admit. Today she wasn't the powerful CEO of Washington Financial Group. Today she was just another ordinary customer walking into Metropolitan Trust Bank. 3 weeks earlier, Amelia had finalized the acquisition of this regional bank chain through a carefully structured deal involving multiple shell companies. The previous owners had no idea who was really behind the purchase, and that's exactly how she wanted it. While her legal team handled the paperwork and her financial advisors crunched the numbers, Amelia had been planning something far more personal and revealing. She wanted to see her new investment through the eyes of a regular customer, not the eyes of a wealthy executive arriving in a luxury car with an entourage of assistants. She wanted the truth about how this bank really treated people, especially people who looked like her. Amelia adjusted her simple jeans and plain navy blouse as she approached the glass doors of the main downtown branch. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she carried only a basic handbag and a folder with some business documents. To anyone watching, she looked like a working professional, perhaps a teacher or a social worker, certainly not someone with a net worth in the hundreds of millions. The bank's interior was impressive, with marble floors, high ceilings, and gleaming brass fixtures. Customer service desks lined one wall, while teller windows occupied the other. A steady stream of people moved through the space, some heading to the ATMs, others waiting in various lines. Amelia took a moment to observe the dynamics playing out around her. At the first customer service desk, a well-dressed elderly white man was being attended to by an enthusiastic young employee who seemed eager to help with every detail of his transaction. The employee smiled constantly, offered coffee, and even pulled out additional forms before being asked. The interaction felt warm and welcoming. At the second desk, a middle-aged Latina woman in a housekeeping uniform was trying to cash her paycheck. The employee helping her seemed distracted, repeatedly asking for additional identification and speaking more slowly than necessary, as if assuming the customer couldn't understand basic English. The woman's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as other customers in line began to grow impatient. Amelia made mental notes but kept her expression neutral. She approached the customer information desk, where a young man with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch was chatting with a colleague about weekend plans. A small nameplate identified him as Derek Martinez, Senior Customer Associate. "Excuse me," Amelia said politely. "I'd like some information about opening a business account." Derek glanced up briefly, his eyes quickly scanning her appearance before returning to his computer screen. "You'll need to wait in line like everyone else," then he said without looking up again. "Business accounts require appointments anyway. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I was hoping someone could at least give me information about the requirements and—" "No appointment, no service," Derek interrupted, still not making eye contact. "You can call the customer service line if you want basic information. The number's on our website." Behind Amelia, a man in a tailored business suit approached the desk. Derek immediately straightened up, flashing a bright smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" Derek's tone was completely different, warm and professional. "I'm interested in your investment services," the man replied. "Absolutely. Let me get someone from our wealth management team to speak with you right away. Would you like some coffee while you wait?" Amelia stepped aside but remained close enough to observe. She watched Derek make several phone calls, arrange for the businessman to use a private consultation room, and even offer to validate his parking. The contrast was striking and exactly what she had suspected might be happening. 20 minutes later, Derek finally acknowledged Amelia again. "You're still here?" he asked with obvious irritation. "I told you to make an appointment." "I understand that appointments are preferred," Amelia replied calmly. "But I'm hoping someone could just give me a quick overview of your business banking options. It would only take a few minutes." Derek sighed dramatically. "Fine. What kind of business?" His tone suggested he was doing her an enormous favor. "Consulting and investment services." Derek's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Uh-huh. And what's your average monthly revenue?" I prefer to discuss specific financial details with a banking specialist, but the business is well established and profitable. Look, lady, I don't have time to waste on people who can't even answer basic questions. Our business accounts have minimum balance requirements that most people can't meet. Are we talking about a few $100s here, or do you actually have serious money to work with? The condescension in Derek's voice was unmistakable. Amelia felt her jaw tighten slightly, but her expression remained calm. Around them, other customers were beginning to notice the interaction. Some seemed uncomfortable with Derek's tone, while others appeared to be enjoying the show. I believe I meet your requirements, Amelia said evenly. Could someone please walk me through the different account options? Derek rolled his eyes. You believe you meet the requirements. That's not how banking works. We need proof of income, business licenses, tax returns, credit reports. You can't just walk in here claiming to have money and expect us to take your word for it. I understand you need documentation. I'm simply asking for information about the accounts themselves so I know what to prepare. And I'm telling you that people who actually qualify for our business accounts don't need to ask these questions. They come in already knowing what they want because they work with real financial advisors. The insult was clear, and Amelia saw several nearby customers exchange glances. A security guard had begun drifting closer, though he wasn't yet directly involved. I'd like to speak with your manager, Amelia said quietly. Derek's face flushed red. My manager? Because I won't hand out account information to someone who won't even provide basic business details? This is exactly the problem with people like you. You think you can demand special treatment without following proper procedures? People like me? Amelia's voice remained steady, but something in her tone made Derek pause. Yeah, people who come in here acting entitled, demanding to see managers when they don't get their way. This is a professional financial institution, not some community credit union where they'll open an account for anyone with $20. The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia looked directly at Derek for the first time since the conversation began. Her eyes were calm but intense, the look of someone who was used to being taken seriously and wasn't accustomed to this level of disrespect. I see, she said softly. And what exactly makes you think I don't belong in a professional financial institution? Derek seemed to realize he had crossed a line, but instead of backing down, he doubled down on his attitude. Look, I'm just trying to save everyone time here. Why don't you try one of the smaller banks down the street? They might be more suitable for your needs. As Derek spoke those words, he had no idea that he was talking to the person who now owned the building, the bank, and had the power to end his career with a single phone call. But Amelia wasn't ready to reveal that yet. She was learning too much about how her new acquisition really operated when nobody was watching. Amelia stood quietly for a moment, letting Derek's words sink in. Around them, the bank's atmosphere had shifted. Conversations at nearby desks had grown quieter, and she could feel people stealing glances in their direction. The security guard had moved closer, pretending to organize some brochures on a display rack. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Amelia said, her voice still calm but carrying a new edge. I'm a legitimate businesswoman seeking banking services. I don't appreciate being dismissed or redirected based on assumptions about my financial status. Derek's face grew redder. Assumptions? Lady, I've been working in banking for 8 years. I can tell when someone's wasting my time. You come in here with no appointment, asking vague questions about business accounts, and you won't even tell me what your monthly income is. That's not how serious business owners behave. And how exactly do serious business owners behave? Amelia asked, genuinely curious to hear his answer. They come prepared. They have their financial advisor call ahead. They don't show up looking like... Derek paused, seeming to realize he was about to say something he couldn't take back. Looking like what? Amelia's question was quiet but firm. Derek glanced around, noticing that their conversation had drawn more attention than he was comfortable with. Instead of answering directly, he tried a different approach. Look, I'm trying to help you here. Our minimum balance requirements are $25,000 just to open a business account. The monthly maintenance fees are $200 unless you maintain a $50,000 average balance. Most of our business clients Have credit lines starting at $500,000. Are you sure you wouldn't be more comfortable at a smaller institution? Amelia pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. Would you like to see my current account balances to verify whether I meet your requirements? Derek barely glanced at the screen before dismissing it. Anyone can fake numbers on a phone. We need official bank statements, tax returns, and verified financial documents. I can't just look at some app and approve a business account. I'm not asking you to approve anything right now, Amelia replied patiently. I'm asking for information about the account types and their features so I can make an informed decision about whether to move my business here. Move your business here? Derek laughed, and the sound was sharp and mocking. From where? What bank are you currently using for your so-called business? Amelia hesitated for a split second. She couldn't mention that her primary accounts were with First National Corporate Banking, where her relationship manager was a senior vice president who handled ultra-high net worth clients. That would raise questions she wasn't ready to answer. I prefer to keep my current banking relationships private until I decide whether to make a change, she said instead. Right, Derek said, his skepticism obvious. You have this mysterious, successful business, but you won't provide any details. You claim to have serious money, but you won't show real documentation. You want information about premium business accounts, but you're being secretive about your current bank. Do you see why this seems suspicious? The accusation of being suspicious hit differently than Derek's previous comments. Amelia felt something shift inside her, a flash of anger that she quickly controlled. She had built her fortune through careful planning, smart investments, and years of hard work. She had earned every degree, every certification, every dollar. To be treated like some kind of scam artist was both insulting and infuriating. There's nothing suspicious about wanting to research banking options before making a commitment, Amelia said, her voice growing colder. What's suspicious is a bank employee who's more interested in making assumptions about customers than providing basic information about services. Derek's jaw tightened. I don't have to stand here and be lectured by someone who won't even be honest about their situation. If you're not ready to provide proper documentation and answer direct questions, then you're not ready to open an account here. Then let me speak with someone who is willing to provide customer service without the attitude, Amelia replied firmly. The attitude? Derek's voice rose slightly. I'm doing my job. Part of my job is protecting this bank from people who waste our time or worse. I've seen plenty of people come in here with big stories about their businesses, trying to open accounts they can't maintain, or running some kind of scam. The implication was clear, and it crossed a line that Amelia hadn't expected even Derek to cross. Several nearby customers had stopped their own transactions to listen more openly now. The security guard had abandoned any pretense of organizing brochures and was watching the interaction directly. Are you suggesting that I'm attempting to commit fraud? Amelia asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm not suggesting anything. Derek backtracked slightly, perhaps realizing he had gone too far. I'm just saying that legitimate business owners usually come prepared with documentation and don't get defensive when asked basic questions. I haven't been defensive. I've been patient, but my patience has limits. Amelia pulled out her business folder. Would you like to see my business license? My insurance documentation? My certified financial statements from last quarter? Derek glanced at the folder dismissively. Those could be fake, too. Anyone can print up official-looking documents these days. That comment broke something in the careful control Amelia had been maintaining. Not her composure, she was too experienced for that, but her willingness to continue this charade. She was learning everything she needed to know about Derek and about the culture he represented in her bank. I want to speak with the branch manager, she said firmly. Right now. The manager is busy with important clients, Derek replied smugly, but I can schedule you an appointment for next week if you want to come back with proper documentation. I'm not leaving, and I'm not waiting until next week. Get your manager now. Derek's face showed a mixture of anger and panic. This wasn't going the way he had expected. In his experience, people usually got frustrated and left when he made it clear they weren't welcome. But Amelia was standing her ground, and her calm confidence was starting to make him nervous. You can't just demand to see the manager because You don't like following proper procedures, Derek said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. What procedures? Amelia asked. The procedure where you insult customers? The procedure where you make assumptions based on appearance? The procedure where you accuse people of fraud without any evidence? Her voice was still controlled, but it carried an authority that made Derek take a step back. Other customers were now openly staring, and some were nodding in agreement with Amelia's words. Derek realized that the situation was spiraling beyond his control. I'm calling security, Derek announced loudly, trying to regain some authority. Good, Amelia replied calmly. Call security. Call your manager. Call whoever you need to call. Because this conversation is about to become very educational for everyone involved. Derek reached for his phone, but his hands were shaking slightly. He was beginning to understand that he had badly misjudged this situation, but he was too proud and too deep into his position to back down now. What he didn't realize was that with every word, every insult, every assumption, he was digging himself deeper into a hole that would soon become his professional grave. As Derek dialed the security extension, Amelia stood perfectly still, her mind already planning her next moves. The investigation phase of her undercover visit was almost complete. Soon it would be time for the revelation phase, and Derek had just made sure it would be unforgettable. Within minutes, 2 security guards approached Derek's desk. The first was an older man named Vincent who had worked bank security for over 15 years. The second was younger, newer to the job, and clearly taking his cues from his senior partner. Vincent had watched the entire interaction unfold and looked uncomfortable with what he had witnessed. What's the situation here, Derek? Vincent asked quietly, clearly hoping to resolve things without making a scene. Derek immediately launched into his version of events. This woman came in making demands, refusing to follow proper procedures, and getting aggressive when I explained our account requirements. She won't provide documentation, won't answer basic questions about her business, and now she's refusing to leave when I told her she needs to make an appointment. Vincent looked at Amelia, who stood calmly with her, hands visible and her expression neutral. Nothing about her body language suggested aggression or threat. Ma'am, is there a problem we can help resolve? Vincent asked politely. Yes, there is, Amelia replied in a measured tone. I came here as a potential customer seeking information about business banking services. Instead of receiving professional customer service, I've been subjected to discriminatory treatment, false accusations, and insulting behavior from your employee. Derek jumped in before Vincent could respond. See? She's making wild accusations now. I was just doing my job, asking standard questions, and she's turning it into some kind of discrimination claim. What specific questions did you ask? Vincent inquired, looking between them. I asked about her business type, her monthly revenue, whether she could meet our minimum balance requirements, basic stuff that any serious business owner should be able to answer easily. Amelia opened her folder and pulled out several documents. I brought business licenses, insurance documents, and financial statements. He refused to look at them, claiming they could be fake. He also suggested I would be more comfortable at a smaller bank because this one wasn't suitable for my needs. Vincent's expression grew more serious. He had been through enough discrimination training to recognize problematic language when he heard it. The phrase, "not suitable for your needs," was exactly the kind of coded language that banks had been sued over in the past. Derek, did you actually review the customer's documentation? Vincent asked. She was being evasive about her business details. I can't waste time looking at papers if someone won't answer direct questions. But you didn't look at the documents she brought? Derek shifted uncomfortably. Like I said, anyone can fake documents these days. We need verified financial information, not just random papers someone brings in. Vincent turned to Amelia. Ma'am, would you be willing to show me what you brought? Today? Amelia spread the documents on Derek's desk. Her business license was clearly legitimate, issued by the State Department of Commerce. Her insurance documentation was from a major provider, covering substantial liability amounts that suggested a significant operation. The financial statements were certified by a respected accounting firm and showed healthy cash flows. Vincent examined the papers carefully. Even without being a financial expert, he could see these were professional, legitimate documents. The numbers alone suggested this was someone who would easily qualify for the bank's premium services. "These look genuine to me," Vincent said quietly to Derek. "Why didn't you review them earlier?" Derek's face was getting redder by the minute. Because she was being difficult and evasive, she wouldn't answer my questions properly. "What questions?" Vincent asked. "About her monthly income, her current bank, basic business information." Amelia spoke up calmly. "I offered to show him my current account balances on my banking app. He dismissed them without looking. I explained that I prefer to keep my current banking relationships confidential until I decide whether to make a change, which is a reasonable business practice. I answered every appropriate question he asked." Vincent was starting to see the bigger picture, and he didn't like what he was seeing. In his 15 years of bank security, he had seen this pattern before, usually ending with complaints to corporate headquarters and sometimes lawsuits. "Derek, I think we should get Helen down here to resolve this," Vincent suggested, referring to the branch manager. "That's not necessary," Derek protested. "I can handle this situation. This woman is just trying to cause trouble because she didn't get the special treatment she wanted." "Special treatment?" Amelia's voice carried a note of incredulity. "I wanted basic customer service, information about account options, professional treatment, the same thing you gave to the gentleman in the business suit who arrived after me, but was immediately offered coffee and a private consultation room." Derek realized his mistake as soon as the words were out of Amelia's mouth. Vincent had seen that interaction too, and the contrast was impossible to deny. "Derek," Vincent said firmly, "call Helen down here right now." "This is ridiculous," Derek muttered, but he picked up his phone and dialed the manager's extension. "Helen, can you come down to customer service? We have a situation." While they waited, the atmosphere in the bank had become tense. Other customers were watching openly now, some recording with their phones. Word had spread among the staff that something significant was happening at Derek's desk. Helen Chen, the branch manager, appeared within minutes. She was a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s who had worked her way up through the banking system. She took one look at the scene, documents spread on Derek's desk, security guards present, a crowd of onlookers and a professionally dressed black woman standing calmly in the center of it all, and knew this was exactly the kind of situation that could destroy careers and cost the bank millions. "What's going on here?" Helen asked, trying to project calm authority. Derek immediately started talking. "This customer came in making unrealistic demands, wouldn't follow proper procedures, and became hostile when I explained our account requirements. She's now making discrimination claims because she didn't get special treatment." Helen looked at the documents on the desk, then at Amelia. "May I ask what type of business services you were seeking today?" "Business checking and savings accounts, possibly a credit line for expansion purposes. I brought documentation to demonstrate my qualifications." Amelia gestured to the papers Vincent had reviewed. Helen quickly scanned the documents, and her eyes widened slightly as she saw the financial figures. These weren't the papers of someone seeking a basic small business account. These were the financials of someone who should be offered the bank's premium services immediately. "I see," Helen said carefully. "And what seems to be the problem?" "Your employee made assumptions about my qualifications based on my appearance. He refused to review my documentation, suggested I would be more comfortable at a smaller bank, implied that I might be attempting fraud, and generally treated me in a way that I can only describe as discriminatory." Helen felt her stomach drop. This was her worst nightmare. A discrimination complaint with witnesses, security cameras recording everything, and what appeared to be a genuinely wealthy potential customer who had been badly mistreated. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding," Helen said diplomatically. "Derek is one of our most experienced associates." "Experience doesn't excuse discrimination," Amelia replied quietly. "And this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of behavior that your employee chose to display because he made assumptions about me." Derek couldn't stay quiet. "I don't have to stand here and listen to these accusations. I was doing my job protecting the bank's interests, following proper procedures." "What procedures?" Helen asked, dreading the answer. "Verifying that customers can actually qualify for the services they're requesting. making sure they're legitimate business owners and not just trying to waste our time. Helen closed her eyes for a moment. Derek had just admitted, in front of witnesses, that he had pre-screened a customer based on his own judgment, rather than following the bank's official policies. This was exactly the kind of statement that employment lawyers love to hear. "Derek," Helen said carefully, "did you follow our standard customer service protocols?" "I asked appropriate questions about her business and financial situation. Did you offer her a consultation with our business banking specialist?" Derek hesitated. She didn't seem to qualify for premium services. Based on what assessment? Derek's pause was telling. He had no good answer because there was no good answer. He had made assumptions, acted on those assumptions, and now he was trapped by the consequences of his choices. Amelia watched this exchange with growing satisfaction, not because she enjoyed seeing Derek squirm, but because she was learning exactly how deep the problems ran in her new bank. This wasn't just one bad employee. This was a management failure, a training failure, and a cultural failure that started at the top. The tension in the bank was thick enough to cut with a knife. Helen stood there looking at the documents, then at Derek, then back at Amelia. She was clearly trying to figure out how to handle this situation without making it worse, but Derek wasn't making it easy for her. "Look," Derek said, his voice getting louder. "I don't care what papers she brought. I've been doing this job for 8 years, and I know when someone is trying to pull something over on us. She comes in here with no appointment, acting all secretive about her current bank, and expects us to just hand over premium account information? That's not how this works." Vincent, the security guard, shifted uncomfortably. "Derek, maybe you should lower your voice. People are watching." "Let them watch," Derek snapped. "I'm tired of people coming in here thinking they can intimidate us into giving them special treatment. This is a professional bank, not some community center." Amelia remained perfectly calm, but something in her eyes had changed. She pulled out her phone and opened the voice recording app. "I'd like to document the rest of this conversation," she announced clearly. "I believe this situation may require further review by your corporate headquarters." Derek's eyes went wide. "You can't record in here without permission. That's probably illegal or something," Helen quickly intervened. "Actually, recording conversations in public spaces is generally legal, and banks are considered public spaces for this purpose." She had been through enough legal training to know that trying to stop a customer from recording would only make things worse. "Fine," Derek said, his panic starting to show. "Record away. You'll just be documenting how I followed proper procedures while you tried to cause trouble." Amelia looked directly at Derek. "Is it proper procedure to tell a customer they would be more comfortable at a smaller bank? I was trying to help you find services that matched your actual needs, and you determined my needs based on what exactly?" Derek paused, realizing he was walking into a trap. "Based on your inability to provide clear information about your business. I brought business licenses, insurance documents, and certified financial statements. You refused to look at them. How is that failing to provide clear information?" Helen watched this exchange with growing horror. Every word Derek spoke was making the bank's legal position worse. She had seen discrimination lawsuits before, and this was exactly how they started. "Derek," Helen said carefully, "perhaps we should take a step back and start over. Ma'am, I apologize for any confusion. Would you like to sit down in my office where we can discuss your banking needs privately?" "I think it's a little late for that," Amelia replied. "Your employee has already made his position very clear, but I am curious about something." "Helen, is it? How long has Derek been exhibiting this kind of behavior toward customers?" Helen's face went pale. The question implied that Derek had a history of problems, and Helen's reaction suggested that might be true. "I'm not sure what you mean," Helen said weakly. "I mean, is this the first time Derek has made assumptions about customers based on their appearance? Is this the first time he suggested that certain people might be more comfortable banking elsewhere? Is this the first time he's refused to provide basic customer service to someone who doesn't look like his idea of a wealthy client?" Derek jumped back into the conversation. "This has nothing to do with how anyone looks. This is about following proper procedures and protecting the bank from people who aren't serious customers." "Not serious customers." Amelia repeated slowly. And what makes you think I'm not a serious customer, Derek? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. He finally understood that every answer he could give would only make things worse for him. Vincent, who had been watching this entire exchange, finally spoke up. Derek, I think you should stop talking now. Why? Because I'm telling the truth? Because I'm doing my job? Because, Vincent said quietly, you're making assumptions that you can't defend, and you're doing it in front of witnesses and cameras. For the first time since the conversation began, Derek looked around and really saw the situation he was in. Multiple customers were watching. Several were recording with their phones. Bank cameras were capturing everything. Other employees were staring from their desks. And standing in the center of it all was a woman who had remained calm, professional, and articulate while he had become increasingly agitated and defensive. Helen tried one more time to salvage the situation. Ma'am, I want to assure you that this doesn't represent the values of our bank. We pride ourselves on providing excellent service to all customers regardless of background. Regardless of background, Amelia repeated thoughtfully. That's interesting. Phrasing. What background do you think I have? Helen realized she had walked into the same trap Derek had been falling into all morning. Any answer she gave would reveal her own assumptions. I simply meant that we serve all customers equally, Helen backtracked. Do you? Because from what I've observed today, that doesn't seem to be true. I watched Derek provide immediate, enthusiastic service to a white businessman who arrived after me. I watched him dismiss and insult me from the moment I approached his desk. That doesn't look like equal service to me. Derek couldn't help himself. That gentleman had an appointment and knew exactly what services he needed. You just wandered in here with vague questions and suspicious behavior. Suspicious behavior? Amelia's voice was dangerously quiet. What exactly was suspicious about asking for information about business banking services? The way you were being evasive about your business details, the way you wouldn't show proper documentation, the way you got defensive when I asked standard questions. I wasn't evasive, I wasn't defensive, and I brought extensive documentation that you refused to examine. The only thing suspicious here is your behavior toward me. Helen knew she had to take control of the situation before Derek said something that would guarantee a lawsuit. Derek, I think you should take a break and let me handle this. A break? Why should I take a break? I didn't do anything wrong. Derek. Helen's voice carried a note of authority that hadn't been there before. Take a break. Now. Derek looked around the room one more time. The crowd of onlookers had grown larger. Customer service had essentially stopped as everyone focused on the drama unfolding at his desk. His co-workers were watching him with expressions ranging from embarrassment to horror. Fine, Derek said loudly. I'll take a break. But when corporate reviews the security footage, they'll see that I was just doing my job while this woman tried to cause trouble and make everything about race. The word hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. Derek had finally said what everyone knew he had been thinking all along. The silence that followed was deafening. Helen closed her eyes. Derek had just admitted that he saw this as a racial issue, which meant he had been treating Amelia differently because of her race. In legal terms, he had just confessed to discrimination in front of multiple witnesses. Amelia looked at Derek for a long moment, then turned to Helen. I think Derek just answered a lot of questions about his motivations and this bank's culture. The question now is what you're going to do about it. Helen was trapped. She could see her career flashing before her eyes, along with the bank's reputation, and potentially millions of dollars in legal settlements. Derek had created a disaster that was going to have consequences far beyond anything he could imagine. Ma'am, Helen said desperately, please let me take you to my office where we can discuss how to resolve this situation appropriately. Amelia smiled for the first time all morning, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just gotten exactly what they needed. Oh, we're definitely going to resolve this, Amelia said quietly. But I think the resolution is going to be very different from what you're expecting. Amelia reached into her handbag and pulled out a business card, handing it to Helen. The branch manager looked down at it, and her face went completely white. The card was elegant, expensive, and bore the logo of Washington Financial Group. But it was the title printed beneath Amelia's name that made Helen's hands start shaking. Chief Executive Officer and Founder. "I don't understand," Helen whispered, staring at the card. 3 weeks ago, Washington Financial Group completed the acquisition of Metropolitan Trust Bank through a series of shell companies, Amelia explained calmly. "I am the new owner of this bank and every other branch in your network." Derek, who had been standing there fuming, suddenly looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Helen was frantically trying to process this information. You're the new owner?" "That's correct. I decided to visit my new investment personally, without announcement, to see how customers were actually being treated. I wanted to understand the culture and service quality from a customer's perspective." Amelia's voice remained steady and professional. "The results have been very educational." Derek's face went from red to pale in a matter of seconds. "That's impossible. You're lying. The new owners are some big investment company. Washington Financial Group is my company," Amelia replied. "We used legal structures to maintain privacy during the acquisition, which is standard practice for large financial transactions. But I assure you, Derek, I am very real, and I now own this bank." Vincent, the security guard, was looking back and forth between them like he was watching a tennis match. He had seen enough workplace drama in his 15 years to know when someone's career was about to end, and Derek was about to experience that reality. Helen was still staring at the business card. "Why didn't you identify yourself when this started?" "Because I wanted to see how you treat customers who don't arrive with fanfare and executive assistance. I wanted to understand what kind of service experience regular people receive when they walk through those doors." Amelia gestured toward the bank entrance. "What I discovered is deeply concerning." Derek was still trying to process what was happening. "This has to be some kind of scam. You're probably working with those people recording on their phones. This is probably some kind of setup to try to sue the bank." Amelia pulled out her phone and made a call. "Good morning, Patricia. Yes, I'm at the downtown branch of Metropolitan Trust. Could you please conference in our legal team and send Robert down here with the acquisition documents? We have a situation that requires immediate attention." While she was on the phone, Helen grabbed Derek's arm. "Derek, stop talking. Just stop talking right now." "Why? Because some woman with a business card claims to own the bank? Anyone can print a business card." Amelia finished her call and turned back to them. "My legal team and my assistant will be here within 20 minutes with documentation proving my ownership. They're also bringing the security footage from our corporate monitoring system, which has been recording this entire interaction." Helen felt like she was going to be sick. "Corporate monitoring system?" "We installed additional security measures during the acquisition process. Every customer interaction in this branch has been recorded and reviewed for the past 2 weeks as part of our operational assessment." Amelia looked directly at Derek. "Your conversation with me today was just the most recent in a series of concerning interactions we've documented." Derek's bravado was starting to crack. "What do you mean, a series of interactions?" "I mean, this isn't the first time you've treated customers poorly based on your assumptions about their appearance or background. Our review team has identified multiple incidents where you've provided substandard service to minority customers while giving preferential treatment to white customers." Helen was frantically trying to figure out how to salvage this disaster. "Ma'am, Dr. Washington, I had no idea. If I had known. If you had known I was the owner, you would have treated me differently," Amelia finished. "But that's exactly the problem. Customer service shouldn't depend on who someone is or who they know. It should be consistent, professional, and respectful for everyone." Derek was finally starting to understand the magnitude of what had happened. But instead of backing down, he doubled down on his position. "I still don't believe this. And even if it's true, I was just doing my job. I was protecting the bank's interests. By insulting customers, by making discriminatory comments, by refusing to provide basic information about banking services." Amelia's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "Derek, you didn't protect the bank's interests. You exposed the bank to massive legal liability." Vincent had been quiet through most of this exchange, but now he spoke up. Derek, I think you should listen to what she's saying. Why? Because she has some fancy business card and made a phone call? I've been working here for 8 years. I know how to do my job. Your 8 years of employment end today, Amelia said quietly. You're terminated, effective immediately. Derek's mouth fell open. You can't fire me. Even if you really are the owner, there are procedures, union rules, documentation requirements. There are procedures for normal terminations, Amelia agreed. But discrimination, harassment, and creating a hostile environment for customers are grounds for immediate termination under both company policy and state law. Your behavior today, recorded in front of multiple witnesses, provides more than enough justification. Helen knew she had to try to protect herself and her remaining staff. Dr. Washington, I want you to know that Derek's behavior doesn't represent our branch culture. The rest of our team provides excellent service to all customers. Amelia looked around the bank. Other employees were watching nervously from their desks, clearly worried about their own jobs. Several customers were still recording with their phones, and the story was probably already spreading on social media. Helen, I've been reviewing personnel files and customer complaint records for the past 2 weeks. Derek has generated more complaints than any other employee in your branch, and most of those complaints follow a similar pattern to what I experienced today. Amelia paused. The question is why those complaints weren't addressed earlier. Helen felt sweat beading on her forehead. She had known about some of Derek's issues but had avoided dealing with them because he was good at generating account openings and loan applications. She had prioritized numbers over customer service, and now that decision was coming back to haunt her. There were some complaints, but they were hard to substantiate. Or you chose not to investigate them thoroughly because Derek brought in revenue? Helen's silence was answer enough. Just then, the bank's front doors opened and 3 people in business suits entered. The woman in front was carrying a briefcase and looking around with the confident air of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. Behind her were 2 men, one carrying a laptop bag and the other with a folder of documents. Dr. Washington, the woman called out as she approached. I'm Patricia, your assistant. I have the legal team and the documentation you requested. Derek looked at the new arrivals, then at the business card in Helen's hands, then at Amelia. For the first time, since the confrontation began, he seemed to really understand that his world was about to change forever. I don't accept this, Derek said desperately. I want to speak to corporate headquarters. I want to file a complaint about this whole setup. Amelia smiled that same cold smile from earlier. Derek, you're looking at corporate headquarters, and the only complaint that will be filed today is the one I'll be making about your conduct. As Patricia handed over the ownership documents and Derek's termination papers, the reality of the situation finally hit everyone in the bank. The woman they had treated so poorly wasn't just another customer. She was their boss, and Derek's career had just ended not because of some corporate policy violation, but because he had chosen to reveal exactly who he really was.